My name is Dr. Alina Hartwell, and at my brother's rehearsal dinner last month, he introduced me to his fiancée's parents as the family pizza delivery girl. 2 hours earlier, I'd been in a secure briefing room at the state capitol advising the governor on cybersecurity protocols for our state's entire electrical grid. The duality of my existence stopped being painful about 3 years ago. Now it's just fascinating. I'm 38 years old, and I hold a doctorate in cybersecurity and critical infrastructure protection from MIT. For the past decade, I've served as the Director of Cyber Defense for our state's Department of Homeland Security, a position that requires TSSCI clearance, which, if you know anything about government classifications, is about as high as it gets without becoming invisible. I've briefed 4 governors, testified before Congress twice, and last year I prevented what would have been the largest ransomware attack on American infrastructure in history. The attack targeted 11 states simultaneously. If it had succeeded, 47 million people would have lost power for potentially weeks. My family thinks I deliver pizzas, not because I told them that. I've never said those words. But my brother Marcus needed an explanation for why his successful older sister, who went to MIT, who supposedly had all this potential, still drove a 10-year-old Honda and lived in a modest apartment instead of showcasing the kind of visible wealth he could brag about at his country club. See, Marcus measures success the way most people do. The size of your house, the brand of your car, the prestige of your job title when someone Googles it. And when he Googled Director of Cyber Defense, State Department of Homeland Security, he found a generic government website with no salary information, no press releases with my name, and nothing that looked impressive to someone who doesn't understand how classified work operates. So he drew his own conclusions. If I'm not rich and I'm not famous, I must be failing. And once Marcus decides something, he doesn't let contradictory evidence confuse him. It started innocently enough. At a family barbecue 4 years ago, someone asked what I did. I said I work in cybersecurity for the state government. My father, trying to be helpful, added that I work with computers. Marcus, who'd had a few beers, laughed and said something like, "Yeah, probably fixing IT problems or something. My sister, the tech support lady." I didn't correct him because honestly, the misunderstanding was so absurd it didn't seem worth addressing. That was my mistake, because Marcus took my silence as confirmation. And once he had his narrative, he committed to it with the conviction of a man who needs his older sister to be less successful than him. Tech support became works with computers at some office, which became does some kind of delivery coordination, which somehow crystallized into pizza delivery. I'm still not entirely sure how that logical leap occurred, but I suspect it had something to do with me once mentioning I couldn't make it to his birthday dinner because I had to coordinate a time-sensitive delivery. The delivery I was coordinating involved encrypted hardware tokens being rushed to 6 different government facilities across the state because we detected a breach attempt that required immediate authentication protocol changes. But Marcus heard delivery, and his brain filled in the rest with whatever made sense to him. And apparently, pizza made sense. I should mention that I actually did deliver pizzas in college. It was a good job, flexible hours, decent tips, and it helped pay for books and expenses that my scholarships didn't cover. There's no shame in that work. But that was 16 years ago, and somehow in Marcus's mind, I never left that job. I just kept delivering pizzas straight through my master's degree, my doctorate, and my entire career in national security. The narrative solidified over time through repetition. Marcus would mention it at family gatherings with that particular tone of sympathetic condescension. Alina S. still doing her delivery thing. You know how she is. Never really figured out what she wanted to do with all that education. My mother, who's a retired librarian with a deep respect for traditional success markers, would get this pinched expression of disappointment. My father, an engineer who understands technical work but not government secrecy, just seemed confused about why I'd spent 7 years at MIT to deliver food. And I let them believe it, not out of spite initially, but out of sheer fascination. You see, my job requires me to think like an adversary, to understand how people construct narratives from incomplete information, to see what assumptions they make when they fill in gaps. My family became an unintentional case study in confirmation bias and willful blindness. Every vague answer I gave them became evidence supporting Marcus's narrative. When I said I couldn't discuss work details, that meant the job was too embarrassing to talk about. When I traveled frequently, I was obviously expanding to different delivery zones. When I kept odd hours, well, pizza places are always busy on weekends. When I mentioned working with federal partners, they thought I meant other pizza franchises. The logic was airtight if you didn't think about it too hard, and they didn't think about it at all. Meanwhile, my actual life looked nothing like their version. My days involved threat analysis, coordinating with FBI cyber divisions, developing response protocols for infrastructure attacks, and regularly briefing state leadership on emerging threats. I carried 2 phones, one personal and one encrypted government device that only about 200 people in the state had the clearance to call. I had authorization to mobilize state resources during cyber emergencies. I'd worked 36-hour shifts during active breach attempts. Last year, the governor personally awarded me a commendation for exceptional service in a closed ceremony that no one outside the security community knew about. But sure, pizza delivery, very flexible hours. The breaking point, or rather the moment everything came to a head, started 6 weeks ago when Marcus announced his engagement to Vanessa Carmichael. I knew the name immediately, though I didn't mention it. Vanessa's father, Richard Carmichael, was a state senator, and more relevantly, he sat on the appropriations committee that controlled funding for my entire department. I'd briefed him personally on 3 separate occasions about critical infrastructure vulnerabilities and budget requirements for enhanced security measures. He knew exactly who I was and what I did. But Marcus didn't know that I knew Richard Carmichael. And Richard Carmichael had no idea that his future son-in-law's sister, the one Marcus had presumably mentioned in passing, was the same Dr. Hartwell who'd spent 2 hours explaining to him why we needed $14 million in emergency cybersecurity funding. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for Friday evening at an upscale restaurant downtown. Black tie optional, which meant mandatory if you understood social codes. Both families would be there, plus the wedding party and some close friends. Very intimate, very elegant, very much an opportunity for both families to impress each other. Marcus called me 3 weeks before to personally ensure I was coming. "You'll be there, right?" he asked, and I could hear the anxiety in his voice. "Of course," I said. "Great. And Alina, maybe just, don't talk too much about work. Vanessa's family is very accomplished. Her father's a state senator, her mother. On the board of like 6 charities, her brother went to Yale. They're just very impressive people." The implication was clear. "Don't embarrass me with your pizza delivery stories." "I'll be appropriate," I assured him. "Thanks, and maybe dress nice. I know you probably don't have many occasions to wear formal clothes in your line of work, but it's black tie optional." I looked at my closet where I had 4 formal gowns from various state functions I'd attended. "I'll find something suitable." The 2 weeks leading up to the rehearsal dinner were professionally intense. We de-identified a sophisticated phishing campaign targeting state employees with access to critical systems. Not my usual jurisdiction, but it showed patterns consistent with state-sponsored attacks, which made it very much my problem. I was coordinating with NSA liaisons, briefing the governor's chief of staff, and working 16-hour days to lock down vulnerabilities before whoever was probing our defenses found a way in. I was also, according to my mother's increasingly frantic texts, supposed to be helping with some aspect of wedding planning that I'd apparently agreed to and completely forgotten about. "Marcus says you promised to handle the transportation logistics," one text read. I had no memory of this conversation, but transportation logistics was at least adjacent to things I actually did, so I sent a non-committal response and went back to tracking malware signatures. The day of the rehearsal dinner, I was in a secure facility coordinating the final stages of our defensive response when my phone rang. Not my personal phone, my secure government line. It was James Mitchell, the head of the governor's security detail. "Dr. Hartwell, we have a situation." His voice was tight, controlled, the tone that meant something serious but not catastrophic. "What's happening?" I asked, already mentally shifting gears. "The governor's receiving a credible threat. Anonymous message sent to his official email about an hour ago, detailed enough that we're taking it seriously. References his schedule for tonight, specifically mentions he'll be vulnerable at a private event." My blood went cold. "What private event?" "That's the thing." His official schedule shows him at the mansion all evening, but we know he's actually attending a dinner for his goddaughter, Senator Carmichael's future daughter-in-law. The rehearsal dinner wasn't publicized. Someone knew anyway. I closed my eyes, of course. Of course the governor was the mystery godfather Vanessa had mentioned would be attending. Of course this threat would come tonight. "Where's the dinner?" James asked. I gave him the restaurant name and address. "I'm already familiar with the location." "What do you need from me?" "We need a threat assessment." This message included specific technical details about state security protocols. It's either someone with inside knowledge or someone very good at faking it. Either way, we need your eyes on this before the governor goes anywhere tonight. "Send me everything. I'll analyze it now." "Already in your secure inbox. And Dr. Hartwell, we may need you on site." "If this is credible, we'll need someone with your clearance level present to coordinate any cyber response in real time. Are you available?" I glanced at my watch. It was 4:30 p.m. The rehearsal dinner started at 7:00. "I'll make myself available. Let me look at the threat first and I'll advise." I hung up and pulled up the message on my secure terminal. It took me 11 minutes to determine it was credible. The sender had included details about our security architecture that weren't public knowledge. Not classified exactly, but specific enough to indicate either a legitimate insider threat or a very sophisticated external actor who'd done serious reconnaissance. I called James back. "It's credible. The technical knowledge is too specific to be a bluff. We need to treat this as a real threat." "Can you determine the source?" "Not immediately. The routing is sophisticated." "I can trace it, but it'll take time we don't have if the governor's moving tonight." "What's his schedule?" "He insists on attending the dinner. Says he's not letting threats dictate his personal life, and he's known Senator Carmichael for 30 years. He won't miss his goddaughter's rehearsal dinner." Of course he wouldn't. Stubborn man. Principled but stubborn. "Then we need enhanced security protocols. I'll need to be on site to monitor any electronic threats in real time and coordinate responses if anything develops." "When does his detail arrive at the venue?" "We're moving at 6:45. Advance team is already there securing the location." "I'll meet you there at 6:30. I need to set up monitoring equipment before he arrives." I hung up and stared at my computer screen. I was going to my brother's rehearsal dinner as part of the governor's security team. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted. I arrived at the restaurant at 6:25 p.m., dressed in my formal navy gown with my credentials and secure tablet in a designer clutch that doubled as a portable operations kit. The advance team was already there, 2 agents I'd worked with before on high-level events. "Dr. Hartwell," the senior agent, Tors, nodded at me. "Governor's 20 minutes out. We've secured the perimeter and swept the venue." Senator Carmichael's been informed of the enhanced security presence, but not the specific threat details. "Does he know I'm here in official capacity?" "We told him we had a cyber specialist on site as precaution. I don't think he connected it to you yet." I set up my equipment in a discreet corner of the restaurant's private room where I could monitor communications and track any suspicious digital activity. The wedding party started arriving at 6:45. I watched through the doorway as Marcus entered with Vanessa, both of them glowing and perfect. My parents arrived moments later, my mother in an elegant dress, my father looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. They saw me in the corner with my tablet and equipment. My mother's face registered confusion, then something like embarrassment. She probably thought I'd shown up in formal wear to my pizza delivery job and somehow talked my way into the fancy restaurant. She hurried over. "Alina, what are you doing here? The dinner doesn't start until 7. Are you delivering something?" Before I could answer, Senator Carmichael entered the room. He saw me immediately and his face lit up with recognition. "Dr. Hartwell, I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. Is this about the appropriations hearing next week? I got your briefing materials, and I have to say, your analysis of the threat landscape was exceptionally thorough." My mother's face went blank with confusion. Marcus, who'd been greeting guests, turned at the sound of my name. "I'm actually here in a different capacity tonight, Senator," I said carefully. "There's a security matter that requires monitoring." His expression shifted to concern. "Nothing serious, I hope. Just precautionary measures. I'll brief you privately if needed." James Mitchell's voice came through my earpiece. "Governor arriving in 2 minutes. Dr. Hartwell, we're clear on all preliminary scans." I touched my ear, activating my microphone. "Copy that. I'm positioned and monitoring." My mother was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Marcus had gone very pale. The senator looked between us, clearly sensing some family dynamic he didn't understand. "I'm sorry," my mother said slowly. "Dr. Hartwell, Elena, what is happening right now?" The restaurant doors opened. 2 state police officers entered first, followed by 4 members of the governor's security detail, and then Governor William Ashford himself, silver-haired and commanding in his tailored suit. He scanned the room, spotted me, and walked directly over. "Dr. Hartwell, thank you for coming on such short notice. I know this is supposed to be your personal time." He turned to Senator Carmichael. "Richard, I hope you don't mind that I've brought extra security tonight." Dr. Hartwell insisted on personally overseeing the cyber monitoring given the nature of the threat we received. "Of course, Bill, whatever you need, though I had no idea Dr. Hartwell was family." The governor looked surprised. "Family? My future son-in-law's sister," the senator said, gesturing toward Marcus, who looked like he might actually faint. Governor Ashford's face broke into a genuine smile. "Your brother is marrying Richard's daughter." "Elena, you didn't mention that when we discussed tonight's security protocols. It didn't seem relevant to the threat assessment, sir." "Well," he turned to Marcus, extending his hand, "you must be very proud of your sister. Dr. Hartwell is absolutely invaluable to this state's security infrastructure. Brilliant mind. We're lucky to have her." Marcus shook the governor's hand mechanically, his face completely drained of color. The entire room had gone silent, everyone watching this interaction. My mother's mouth was literally hanging open. My father looked like he was trying to solve a complex equation and failing. Vanessa stood frozen, clearly recognizing the significance of the moment but not quite understanding the family dynamics at play. "I'm sorry," Marcus finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Did you say Dr. Hartwell?" "Your sister holds a doctorate from MIT, the governor said, looking puzzled. "Surely you knew that, and her work in cybersecurity is classified, obviously, but I can tell you she's one of the most respected professionals in her field nationally." He clapped Marcus on the shoulder warmly. "You must get tired of her never being able to talk about work. Security clearances are terribly inconvenient for family conversations." I watched my brother's face cycle through shock, confusion, horror, and finally, devastating comprehension. "Pizza," he whispered. "I told everyone you delivered pizza." The governor looked at him strangely. "I'm sorry, what?" "If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should know you best, if you've watched your family create a fiction about your life while you stood right in front of them, if you've ever wanted justice without having to demand it yourself, then you understand exactly how I felt in that moment. This is untold revenge, where hidden truths come to light and the underestimated finally get their moment. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories of quiet victories and perfectly timed revelations. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't what you say, it's what you never had to explain. More stories of betrayal, vindication, and poetic justice coming your way. Don't miss the next one.